Hello and welcome back to People's TV. In today's news commentary, we once again draw your attention to a development in the Gaza Strip that has been inaccurately reported by mainstream media outlets. Reports claim that the State of Israel has taken steps to ban approximately 25 to 30 humanitarian organizations, non-governmental organizations, non-profits, and social service providers from operating in Gaza, effective January 1, 2026. Following this announcement, several institutions sympathetic to Gaza strongly condemned Israel's decision, accusing the Jewish state of deliberately targeting and suppressing organizations that provide humanitarian relief to the people of Gaza. However, these 30 banned organizations account for only about 15% of all such entities operating in Gaza, which highlights the sheer number of organizations active in the Gaza Strip. Estimates suggest that at least 250 to 300 non-governmental organizations are currently operating in Gaza. In our view, Israel should consider banning additional organizations that are sympathetic to Hamas terrorists and that support them in various ways. Several other terrorist groups are active in Gaza in addition to Hamas. Among them is the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, as well as the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. The Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade is the armed wing of Fatah, a political movement primarily operating from the West Bank. Another group, known as the People's Front for the Liberation of Palestine, is a leftist organization whose armed wing is called the Abu Ali Mustafa Brigades. Another leftist faction operates under the name Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. In addition, numerous armed groups have emerged more recently in areas such as Jenin and Nablus. One such group is the Lion's Den. Another is the Jenin Brigade, which is largely composed of militants based in the refugee camps in Jenin. Sustaining an armed movement requires far more than ideology alone. Weapons procurement, ammunition supply, logistics, recruitment, and training are all parts of a sophisticated and largely concealed financial ecosystem. These underground networks cannot be meaningfully weakened without disrupting the funding channels that keep them operational. This context explains the rationale behind Israel's decision to restrict the activities of certain organizations, with the measures taking effect on January 1, 2026. While many of these entities publicly portray themselves as humanitarian actors, evidence suggests that some function as financial and logistical enablers of terrorist activity in the Gaza Strip. Funds are solicited internationally under the banner of humanitarian aid and refugee assistance, yet portions of these donations are diverted to support Hamas and other militant groups. Previous cases in Europe, where individuals and groups were detained for collecting money under the pretense of relief work while financing terrorism, demonstrate how charitable narratives can be exploited to sustain violent organizations. In the previous year, Israel also took a decisive step by barring UNRWA from operating in the Gaza Strip. UNRWA, the United Nations agency responsible for relief operations, was accused of employing individuals linked to Hamas, including militants on its payroll. Measures of this nature are viewed by Israel as the only effective way to dismantle organizations that publicly claim charitable status while covertly enabling terrorist activity. Restricting their presence on the ground is seen as essential to disrupting these networks. Over time, Hamas and other armed factions have transformed such organizations into lucrative financial mechanisms. Funds generated through humanitarian projects are allegedly diverted to benefit militant leaders, allowing them to live in comfort and luxury. This financial dependence on conflict explains their resistance to lasting peace initiatives. In the absence of war, these structures collapse, forcing a return to democratic accountability. Figures such as Mahmoud Abbas, who reportedly maintains a private jet, are often cited as symbols of this entrenched system. Israel's position remains that individuals responsible for violence should not transition into political legitimacy, which is why it continues to push for their removal rather than their integration into governance. For these terrorist leaders and armed factions, abandoning terrorism would also mean surrendering the privileged and luxurious lifestyles they have built over decades. Conflict has become a business model for them. By continuously exploiting the refugee status and suffering of innocent Gazans, they have secured a steady flow of international funding, sympathy, and political leverage. The longer instability persists, the longer these revenue streams remain open, making peace a direct threat to their personal interests and power structures. Over many years, this exploitation has been refined into a sophisticated system. So-called charitable organizations, front groups, and militant factions are deeply interconnected, operating as parts of a single, coordinated network rather than isolated entities. Funds, resources, and influence move seamlessly between these actors, allowing terrorism to be financed under humanitarian cover. This tightly woven structure ensures that money raised in the name of relief and aid ultimately sustains armed groups, entrenches corruption, and prolongs the suffering of ordinary Gazans who remain trapped in a cycle they did not create and do not benefit from. Shifting attention to the West Bank, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has issued a serious warning based on intelligence assessments indicating that Hamas is planning an attack similar in nature to October 7, 2023. He has alerted senior IDF commanders responsible for the area to remain on the highest level of readiness, stressing that the threat is both credible and imminent. The warning underscores growing concerns within Israel's security establishment about Hamas attempting to expand its operational footprint beyond Gaza and into the West Bank. Katz has instructed the Israel Defense Forces to continue and intensify military patrols across the West Bank, a strategy that Israeli officials say has already contributed to a noticeable reduction in terrorist incidents. These patrols are aimed at disrupting terrorist cells, intercepting weapons, and preventing attacks before they can be carried out. In addition, the defense minister has stated that Israel is considering the establishment of a buffer zone to separate Arab population centers from Jewish communities, a move intended to reduce friction and prevent direct access for would-be attackers. Stabbing attacks and other forms of terrorism have become a persistent threat in the region, and Israeli authorities argue that these security measures are necessary to restore stability and protect civilian lives. If this report helped you see the situation on the ground clearly, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to People's TV, where truth has no agenda, and facts speak louder than spin.
Subscribe us for more details.